Thank you for joining us once again at the Chinese Literature Readers Club. In this April, as the beautiful spring weather arrives, I think it serves the perfect chance for me to bring you a piece of a mountain and lake, a profile of the idyllic rural China, and the voice of the country's award-winning author, Zhou Daxin. So allow me to present you this new book, The Sons of a Red Lake, written by Zhou Daxin, translated by Yuan Haiwang, and published by Sinois Books. So I'm very thrilled to announce that today's event is supported by Lead Center of New Chinese Writing and Sinois Books. May I have the honor to introduce Dr. Francis Whitman, Director of Lead Center of New Chinese Writing. Francis, tell us a little bit more about the center.
Thank you, Vivian. Yes, I am the director of the Leeds Centre for New Chinese Writing, based at the University of Leeds. We often work with Sinois Books, and Zhou Daxin is our featured author of the month in the book club. So if anybody hasn't had a chance to read this new novel, there is a short story by Zhou Daxin on our book club that you can read in English or in Chinese after this event. So anyway, yeah, let's get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Francis. I would also like to introduce today's speakers, the translator of the Sons of Red Lake, Yuan Haiwang, and James Trapp, translator of Zhou Daxin's another book, Longevity Park, and many other great works as well. Could I ask Daniel Lee, marketing manager of ACA Publishing, to give us a little more introduction of both translators?
Certainly. Thank you very much for the very kind intro, Vivian. I'll just get right into it. So Professor Yuan is a professor emeritus at the Western Kentucky University in the US and a guest professor of English at Nankai University, China. He is a writer, translator, and translation consultant. He has authored and co-authored many books, including Tibetan Folk Tales, Tale from the Other China, The Magic Lotus Lantern. Among 24 of his translation includes Songs of the Forest by Zhang Wei, Open Air Cinema by Su Tong, and he has also consulted on multiple other Sinois Books titles. On the other hand, James is a retired China education manager at the British Museum. He has published China-related books on language, astrology, science, and technology. His translation works include The Art of War, The Dao De Jing, and the medieval crime thriller Final Witness, China's First Crime Scene Investigator, among others. Much of his work revolves around integrating the study of Chinese language culture and breaking down the barriers of cultural misunderstanding that still persists. Over to you, Vivian.
Thank you, Daniel. Would you also tell us a bit more about Sinois Books?
Certainly. Sinois Books is a UK published independent press that publishes only the best of Chinese translated literature and contemporary fiction. Our mission is to act as a bridge between the Chinese and English speaking worlds so that the best Sinophone authors and their works can transcend the language barrier. We believe that literature is a summation of the struggles, aspirations, and the ideals of the authors, and only by appreciating them can we truly have a deeper level of understanding.
Thank you, Daniel. I believe this has been the fourth book of Zhou Daxin you published. And could you, for those who are not yet familiar with him, could you introduce a little bit about the author and his work as well?
Certainly. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Well, I think I'll do this in two parts. I'll give a brief biography of Zhou Laoshi's works, and then I'll show you a little video we've put together for Zhou Laoshi's Sons of Red Lake, which we really are quite proud of. So to give you an idea of who Zhou Laoshi first is, Zhou Daxin was born in Dengzhou, north central China in 1952. And he is a novelist, short story writer, and essayist whose realist fiction mostly focuses on the ordinary people in his home province of Henan. He made his literary debut in 1979 and has published over 9 novels, 33 novellas, and more than 70 short stories, as well as essays and plays. In 2016, the People's Literature Publishing House published selected works by Zhou Daxin, a 21-volume collection of novels, novellas, and short stories. Zhou has received numerous awards, including the National Outstanding Story Award, Mingfu Award, the People's Literature Award, and of course, the biggest of them all, the Malden Wenxue or Malden Literature Prize. His works have been translated in 24 languages, including English, French, and German. And his books, his works in English translation by Sino's books consist of After the Finale, Fields of Joy, Longevity Park, and The Sons of Red Lake. And to introduce The Sons of Red Lake, I'll just play you a little clip we have.
Oh, what a beautiful video.
Thank you. Yeah. If anyone wants to find out a little bit more information about Zhou Daxin's works, I've attached some links here to the chat.
Sure. Unfortunately, Zhou Daxin 老师 is not joining us today online, but he's pre-recorded a video for us to talk about the writing process of The Sons of Red Lake. Let's take a look, shall we?
Certainly. Give me 1 second to boot that up for you.
Sure.
大概会带到3个方面的这个东西吧一个就是了解中国乡村，特别是中原乡村在改革开放这个时代背景下发生的巨大变化，这是第一个方面。第二个就是了解中国农民，特别是中原乡村的这个农民，他们为争取富裕幸福的生活所做的努力。第3个方面是可以了解或者知道我们中原乡村这个湖光山色这个美好和美丽，了解我们中原乡村的民俗风情，是想表现我们中国乡村发生的巨大变化，表现中国农民精神世界里边发生的变化，把我们中国在改革开放这个背景下，这个乡村的那个真实情况呈现出来。如果一定要用一句话来描述的话，那可以这样描述，就是中原乡村的湖光山色变得更加美丽，更加这个适宜我们中国农民居住。这部书是我长篇小说中很重要的一部作品。我是一个用现实主义写作方法来写作的作家。我的主要这个写作宗旨就是表现当下的中国社会发生的变化，表现当代人他们的精神世界。这部书应该是我对中国乡村生活的一个展示和呈现。查斯出版社已经出版了我4部作品了，加上这一部是4部作品。我非常感谢查斯出版社把我的作品翻译介绍到英语世界，和英语世界的读者们见面。我的这部书和其他的作品的关系，应该是，你像我的有的作品是写城市生活的，像21大厦，那么这部书呢就是着重写乡村生活，还有些老年这个社会生活状态的，就是天黑得很慢这部书。这部书查斯也出版推出了，在英语世界取得了不错的反响。 这部书在中国也获得了很多读者的喜欢。它主要是对人们过去相对忽略的老年人的生活进行了表现。因为中国已经和大多数发展国家一样进入了老年社会，老年人的生活应该被作家所关注。2000年初啊，我回到我的家乡，河南南阳市。南阳市呢，就是南水北调中线工程的起点，是现在南水北调中线工程输到北京水的水源地。我到这个丹江口水库去周围走了一圈，了解了这个当下乡村生活的情况，和很多农民做了交谈。回来以后，我就生出了创作一部表现乡村生活的长篇小说的愿望，然后就慢慢写，将近用2-3年时间把它写完。就是这个湖光山色，写出来的这个初衷呢，就是想把当下中国乡村的这种变化给它呈现出来，把中国农民这个为改变自己的生活状态、改变生活质量所做的这种努力表现出来。当然也通过这部书把我们中原乡村这种湖光山色的美景、这种民族风情给它呈现出来。写完之后呢，在国内出版以后引起了很不错的反响。这个我也很希望他和外国读者们见面。那么经过查斯出版社的翻译出版，他在英语世界也获得了很不错的评价。我很高兴，我就希望英语世界的读者们能从这本书里，了解到中国农民为改变自己的生活、为追求富裕幸福生活所做的努力，以及今天他们的生活所达到的这种水平，知道了解我们中国乡村在改革开放这40年间发生的巨大变化。我是从乡村出来的。我知道我们在改革开放之前，我们乡村是比较贫穷的。那么经过这些年的努力，中国的乡村发生了巨大的变化。我希望英语读者能从这本书里了解这种变化。
Well, thank you. Thank you for the video. It's really interesting to hear how the trip triggered Mr. Zhou Daxin to start writing this story. So I'm sure everyone must be super curious about the story and the details of it. So now let's invite Mr. Yuan Haiwang, Professor Yuan Haiwang, the translator of this book, to read an excerpt for us. Over to you, Professor Yuan.
Okay. Yeah, the author. Yeah, I'm so thankful to CAC and an author to allow me to translate part of the book. And it was a book translated by someone else, but we can't contact him anymore. So I translate part of it, like a quarter of it. So let me read a passage that I translated. And I think this part is a dialogue between the two protagonists. The female protagonist, Nuannuan, and representing the good, the peasants, and the former village leader, Zhang Shiden, representing the evil, the bad. And okay, now let me read it. Before people knew it, it was getting chilly. The number of tourists who came to the West Bank dwindled. One day,
You just muted yourself, Professor Yuan.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Wow, wasting us a lot of time. And okay, before people knew it.
Apologies. There seems to be some technical issue on my end.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Cool.
Let me start. Before people knew it, it was getting chilly. The number of tourists who came to the West Bank dwindled. One day, Nuannuan laundered clothes in her residence as there was nothing to do in the vacant Shangxin Yuan. She also cleaned her parents-in-law's bedroom and other rooms. Then she strolled to Chudiju, her hotel. She had learned from sister-in-law Charlotte that about a dozen visitors from Kaifeng were coming to stay in Chudiju, so she went to make some arrangements. Sister-in-law Charlotte had become the manager of Chudiju after Nuannuan started working in Shangxin Yuan. She wanted to ask if sister-in-law Charlotte had any difficulty and needed her help. She had stepped a few meters away from her residence when she heard a gruff voice. "Chu Nuannuan." This unusual voice startled her, and she abruptly turned around to look in the direction of the voice. She caught sight of a skinny older man leaning on a walking cane. He was standing there glaring at her with anger written on his face. A perplexed Nuannuan asked, "You called me?" "Phew, did I call a dog?" the older man said with venom while stamping his cane on the ground. It was the phew that betrayed Zhang Shideng's identity. She was taken aback the moment she recognized him. How could Zhang Shideng have changed so much? How could he have so transformed? He looked like a different person, a senile man. His prowess and majesty had suddenly vaporized. It was the first time Nuannuan had seen him since his downfall. She had heard he was sick. Of course, she didn't care what disease was nagging him, nor did she care how long he had suffered from it. He looked seriously sick to her, which was beyond her wildest imagination. Wow, people can change so fast. "Do you have something on your mind?" Nuannuan found it hard to leave immediately, wondering if he got sick because he got voted out of his office. If so, she felt a little bit responsible for it. "If I didn't, then why would I have to come to see a slut like you?" Zhang Shideng squeezed the words from his teeth. These harsh words blew away the little pity she had for him. She quickly turned around, ready to leave. She didn't have to fear him because he was now an ordinary person like her. He didn't have the power to call and stop her, but she quickly changed her mind and slowed her steps to a standstill. Then she slowly turned around to glare at him. She wanted to know what in the world he would do to him. "You slut, you fooled me. You promised to stop Kaitian from running against me." Zhang Shideng walked up towards Nuannuan, his wide open eyes bloodshot with a ferocious look. Nuannuan broke into a smile of triumph mixed with pity, thinking, "Your anger's still lingering." But she calmly said, "Why did you try to keep him out of the election? Who gave you the right? Why did we have to do whatever you told us?" Staring into Zhang Shideng's vicious eyes, she added, "You should be open-minded. Just think why you have to remain in the post forever. Slut, I didn't see through you. I didn't expect you were so cunning. Now have a good look. Do you think all those who you bullied before were stupid? That they would take your bullying like a lying down? Don't be happy too soon." His threat enraged Nuannuan. "If I'm happy, what can you do about it? Do you still want me to cry before you? Do you still want to see me begging humbly before you? You are dreaming. Things like that will never happen. Wait and see. The day when you cry will come. Don't even think about it. Don't think about it." A cold smirk flickered in Zhang Shideng's eyes. "Let me ask you, have you told Kai Tian about my sleeping with you? Did he know we cuckolded him? You swine! The sudden onslaught of humiliation dazed Nuannuan. I calculated that you hadn't told him about it. I guess you've kept him in the dark all this time. Please allow me to divulge it to him myself, would you? Zhang Shideng's face twitched with excitement. Let me see how you'll react. Don't you want to be happy, huh? You beast! Nuannuan shivered with wrath. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Professor Yuan. I can feel the power from your reading. Really looking forward to reading the whole book now. I'm curious to know that how did you encounter this book in the first place, and what attracted you to work on this project?
Well, as I said, thanks to CAC and especially Miss Wang. Wang Ying contact me and asked me to take a look at the book at first and see how if there's some culturally misunderstood part of it or whatever. And then I surprisingly I found that quite a lot was missing. So I was interested. So Miss Wang decided that you fill it out. So I just, and also I was very interested in the book as I read it. And I think it was fascinating, especially the character Nuannuan and her, her resilience, her suffering, and then she come back and fighting back. And yeah, that's how. Thank you.
I know Wang Ying Laoshi is always very good at finding the best translators in the world.
Thank you.
Another thing is actually, I don't know if most of our English readers noticed the title you used, The Sons of a Red Lake, is actually not literally the same with the original. 湖光山色. The Chinese original actually meant the mountain and the lake, the scenery of a mountain and the lakes, mountains and lakes. And you decided to change to this translation. What was your consideration in this choice? Yeah.
Okay. And even that translation, the scenery of mountains and rivers, that doesn't cover everything. 湖光 in 湖光山色. 湖光 光 means the light. The light, that's the reflection in the lake. 山色, the color of the mountains. That's very, very poetic in Chinese. And the Chinese give you the image. But once it's translated into English, it lost it. So he lost it. So instead of trying to get that back, in fact, it's impossible. And so we kind of started by grasp the gist of the story, because it happened to those people, the sons and daughters, and especially the two men, the guy who were corrupted, the two villager leaders, and the woman. And it also happened around the lake, by the lake, the Red Lake. So that's why the sons of the lake, that kind of grasp the gist and also give you the image of the story.
My same question also goes to James, actually. When you translated Longevity Park, you also chose a different English title than the original, 天黑得很慢, which literally meant the day darkens very slowly. Sorry for my poor translation. So that's good. How did you, why did you make that choice then?
It's very much what Professor Yuan said. In fact, I just had to write a little piece about for another book I'm doing about choosing titles. And it's actually a big problem, or not a problem, it's a challenge, because certainly the books that I've worked on, the titles, the Chinese titles are replete with their nuances, cultural, historical, literary, and so on, which are next to impossible to capture in English, and a straight translation simply doesn't work. So, as Professor Yuan said, you have to put yourself kind of in the place of the author, and second guess him about what the central themes are, and what where you think the emphasis lies. With Longevity Park, it's such a complex novel, and it covers so many aspects. It's not just, although Zhou Daxin himself said it was about the problems of aging in China, it's much more than that, because there's the central character is in fact a young girl, and we follow her travails in life as well as the old judges. So it was very difficult to find anything that captured anything about that, except that the structure of the book is that it's presented as actually a series of lectures, evening lectures given for elderly people in a park in Beijing, a park that actually exists in the southwest of Beijing. And it's called, the direct English translation is Longevity Park. And it struck me as being very appropriate, not just because that is the overall setting, but also because my experience in China is that parks play a pivotal role in Chinese society. It's one of the things that when I used to take tours out to China, most impressed Westerners was the life of a Chinese park, and how it's a kind of microcosm of Chinese society. And so I felt that simply saying this is where it's set, this is the story from Longevity Park, was as good an option as any, and I think it actually sits very well in the end with the novel. But it is a challenge. It's certainly a challenge translating titles.
That's such an interesting point. I've never thought about it before you said it. The park
reflects
society. Right. Yeah. After I read the book, after reading the book, The Sons of Red Lake, my first reaction was this female character, Nuannuan. She is awesome. She is resilient but somewhat a very tragic, character as well. Professor Yuan, to what extent do you think she is a typical representation of women in rural China?
Well, mostly they were there is a survey about the time when the book was published, saying they're a little conservative than people in the city. And interestingly, women in the rural areas a little more open and less conservative than men in the country. So this also shows, you see the relationship between she and her husband. So, well, that's very interesting. And I think that she also, the Chinese also, like I think everywhere, like for instance, if somebody was violated, they might not report it to call the police. They think it's it's a shame, and that happened to her too. And when she came back from the city because her mother was sick, and but what would you do? You have to. She had to make some money. Want to make some money, but she and her husband got swindled by somebody, cheated by somebody, and lost a lot of money. They borrowed from the villagers, and then at that time, that village head took advantage of her and violated her, kind of a rape her, slept with her, whatever. And she didn't tell her husband. She just swallowed it. And then she found some courage from moral support from a monk. That shows the Buddhist part of it. I think Zhou Daxin and also kind of a Buddhist idea in there. And she got moral support from there. She always talked with him. He gave him the wisdom, give her the wisdom, and so that she can survive. I think, yeah, that kind of shows how the rural women and fare in the country. And by the way, and there was another survey that the Chinese women CEOs in the 500, I think it's a 6.5 something, more than 5 points average in the world. So now you see, because there was the tradition after the communists took over. I mean, after 1949, Mao Zedong advocated the idea of men and women are equal, 半边天, half of the sky, and so yeah, that also work into that. So now you can see a lot of women working and self-reliant. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so she is such a complex and all-rounded character.
That's right. Even I didn't understand part of it, the Buddhist, twist in that. Yeah, that's right. You have to ask the author, I guess.
And we have to read the book
Yeah,
and get our own interpretations.
Yeah, give us your opinions.
James, in your book, Longevity Park, there was also, although the story is actually set in the city, there is a female character from the countryside. And was that, how do you feel, do you feel she is a typical representation of a Chinese female?
I'm not sure I'm entirely placed to speak about typical representations of Chinese females, but she's an admirable character, and part of the story is about her adjustment from her comparatively simple provincial upbringing to adjusting to complex, challenging life in the city, and not just the physical problems, but the emotional problems she encounters as well. She is an extraordinarily strong character, very resilient, very resourceful, but she comes across as entirely sympathetic and very human. She starts out as the nurse companion of the aging retired judge, who's I suppose the central figure. Though I would argue that they actually share the emphasis. And throughout the novel, the relationship between them develops and changes from one of nurse at the beck and call of this rather irascible old judge, until the judge himself, as his health deteriorates very severely, becomes entirely reliant on her. And they become emotionally and physically interdependent. In fact, physically interdependent in a rather extraordinary way, which you'll have to read the book to find out about. There's also a Buddhist element in this, in that our heroine takes the judge, she goes by herself deep into the mountains to visit a temple where she's given a secret, which she then uses to, if not quite bring the judge back to life, at least to extend his life. So there's a mystical element in there, which is quite interesting because it contrasts with the fake mysticism. The judge becomes obsessed with ways of finding, of trying to extend his life, and there are all sorts of charlatans out there who trick him out of his money in various, actually sometimes quite comical ways, although there's a permanent element of tragedy in it. But in the end, it's a real Buddhist monk who comes up with potentially the cure. So perhaps there's a message there as well. But she, our heroine, the little nurse, she's a very strong character. So I will have to apply to the Chinese in the audience and to yourself to decide whether that's typical of Chinese women or not. But I suspect from my own limited experience it is. So yeah, it's. No, she's a remarkable character. She's actually the narrator of the whole story as well. So she really carries the whole thing.
Thank you. I think Zhou Daxin 老师 has a lot of good things to talk about the Chinese women, for sure.
I think he has great respect for the women. Yeah. I think she created two mother image And that reminds me of a Chinese poem, like Yu Ziyin. The mother was sewing the clothes for her son, who will go away. She did it very carefully, just fear that he might not come back. So that sort of thing. So while that woman was nursing an older person, but actually the whole generation. And also this woman, Nuannuan, also is nursing the whole village. She's trying to get the whole village out of poverty. So it's yeah, that image.
Yes, it sometimes feels that they're not maybe the loudest speaking people, but they actually have a lot of resistance and it has a lot of power and
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that in James' book, the translated by James, also mentioned the monk, huh? So yeah, that shows the Zhou Daxin Lao's idea, his belief.
Interesting. Could I ask Ms. Professor Yuan, what unique challenges did you face when translating this book?
For me, I think Zhou Daxin was born a few years earlier than I did, but still we are the same generation. And I grew up in China until I was 31 when I came here. So basically, I didn't encounter any cultural problem. Except for that Buddhist part of it, why she was so kind of I mean she was so passive, didn't fight back. Well, yeah, maybe the whole social pressure, but still, yeah. On the other part, I think one difficult part is that when two authors were translating the same book, normally they will get in touch with each other and smooth it out, and so that the whole book will be consistent. But since we couldn't find that translator, unfortunately, so I have to try hard to mimic his style and they try to make it consistent. Yeah.
I see. But I think from the paragraph you read to us, I believe you done a really good job.
Thank you.
What about you, James? Did you what was the difficult part when you translated longevity part?
Casting my mind back, I think the challenge always is finding the right voice for the character. I have to say that Zhou Daxin writes beautifully. It's very fluent and very smooth, and so it flows. When you're translating it, you find that it flows. So from the technical point of view, it was a pleasure to do. But finding the voice for this initially naive young nurse and catching the feeling of her growing confidence. Although, in fact, yes, I suppose, does she become more confident? She becomes more competent, certainly. So yes, in linguistic and even actually culturally, I didn't find anything that surprised me. I mean, there's some weird stuff in there, to be sure, but it was all consistent with things that I understood from my own Chinese studies. So that helped. But it's very complex. He interweaves modern and traditional in a very skillful way, and that's making sure that you have that kind of continuity in the English as well as in the Chinese was interesting. So when it becomes more technical, it goes off into these areas of pseudo philosophy and real philosophy and so on, making sure that sounded convincing in English, because clearly it's convincing. I mean, this poor judge gets fleeced of a huge amount of money by a number of charlatans offering very to him plausible cures, some of which are modern, some of which are traditional, so bringing in Taoist elements and elements of Chinese medicine, so all that kind of thing. So there was quite a lot of quite detailed cultural stuff to be negotiated, which sometimes can sound a little weird in English, to be honest. When you're translating traditional Chinese medicines and things, I mean, to an English readership, it sounds pretty odd. But then it is odd to an English readership, so you just have to accept that. But he's as an author, he's a pleasure to translate, certainly.
Looks like you really enjoyed translating his works.
Yeah,
and I agree with you. It's really hard to bring out the culture, the deep-rooted culture, to a readers with speaking a different language, and also make them understand it. It's a really a big challenge. In earlier video by Mr. Zhou Daxin, he actually mentioned that the trigger to write this book was a trip to visit the area, the Red Lake, and the area is actually very scenic, has a long history. So, and also in his book, he also mentioned there is a lot of a plot surrounding the tourism industry. So today we actually have a very special guest joining us. That's Mrs. Xue Ling, from Director of the China National Tourist Office, London. Hello, Xue 老师. Hello, hi, welcome. So could we invite you to say a few words to us?
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. I always think, you know, the journey to China could start with anything and from anywhere. And today, I think we started from Henan. Why? It's the hometown of Zhou Daxin, you know, a well-known Chinese writer. And we start from his novel, The Song of Red Lake, winner of the China Modern Literature Award in 2028. Why say Henan? Henan is located in what we call the central plains of China. Henan is historical. It has 4 of 8 ancient capitals of China, and Henan is cultural. It has 5 of 37 China's world cultural heritages. Henan is agriculture too. It is still China's main grain and cotton production base. And Henan is also scientific. Of China's 4 ancient scientific inventions, 3 took place here. And Zhou Daxin was born in Henan and left here at the age of 18 in 1970. He once said in an interview, life is a slow river, childhood and youth are the source of this river, and its impact on the person is decisive. No matter where I go, my heart is always attached to the central plains. For me, writing is the memory of my hometown. So The Song of Red Lake is a story related to rural poverty alleviation through tourism. Poverty alleviation is what has been truly happened across China, especially in remote rural areas ever since 1949. And in the last decades, 800 million people have been lifted out of poverty and are enjoying a much better life. Quite an achievement, I mean, as a combined effort for both from the party, the people, central and the regional government and local communities. So for the past 2 years, CNTO London's wider China program on our social media platforms has been showcasing these best practices of poverty alleviation, I mean, through tourism. They are the factual examples. You know, Zhou Daxin's work is fiction, but what on our social media are factual examples of using the immense transformational power of tourism to unlock the potential of regions and the communities for the sustainable local community. So, I mean, on our social media, the selected practices are from the joint hard work of several consecutive years by the World Travel Alliance, the World Bank, and the International Poverty Reduction Center in China. Although much progress has been made, we know rural revitalization through tourism is a long and ongoing process and would need everyone from the local community and governmental bodies to continue the joint effort. So today, CNTO London joins hands again with Ellen Charles Publishing, Asia Publishing, to start the journey to China with Daxin's The Song of Red Lake, And I hope the book and the event today will provide some comprehensive understanding of poverty alleviation through tourism case study. And perhaps many would prefer to see for themselves when travel to China becomes possible again. So I would like to thank the Chinese Literature Readers Club. The very best. I wish them the very best in the future and look forward to seeing many more new Chinese books translated and published in the UK. I hope you stay tuned to CNTU London social media channels for more China related story. Thank you. You are muted.
You're muted, Vivian.
I do apologize. Thank you, Mrs. Shi. We will certainly do and follow the social media accounts. And I've personally never been to Henan, but I think reading this book can be at the start of the journey. Francis, are you here still?
I am still, yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Would you? We are going to leave some time to our audience for Q&A. Would you like to moderate this bit?
Yeah, that's fine. Can I ask first of all, how strict are we with the time limit? Are we going to finish in 8 minutes time?
What do you say? Maybe 10 minutes?
Okay, so long as Zoom doesn't cut us off.
See how it goes, Francis. See how it goes.
Marvelous. I think following on from, thank you very much, Vivian. Following on from the discussion on tourism just now, we've had a couple of questions in the chat which seem to link into that rather well. So Anna and Max have both asked about the realist element of Zhou Daxin's novels. Anna is saying that they deal very closely with the often hard reality of contemporary life in China, but sometimes have fable-like or mystical elements. So to what extent do you feel that these novels are realist? And then how do they balance the realism and the mysticism which these readers have found in the novels? Sorry for taking questions together, everybody, but we're slightly short of time. Thank you. That's, I think, to both James and Professor.
I think the perception of it being those being two separate things is perhaps one for Western readers. In the Chinese, I don't think you have this feeling. The I don't know, mysticism or whatever seems to be a natural part of the narrative and a natural part of the thinking, and not something that would seem unusual necessarily. I'm always very wary of speaking as if I was Chinese, because I am, despite appearances, aware that I'm not. But I think there's overall there's a willingness to accept both the practical and the realist and the mystic as part of a whole, rather than two separate elements. It wasn't something that struck me, certainly, when translating Longevity Park, but I can see now it would, because there is some weird stuff in there, but it didn't seem weird in the context of the novel itself, and of certainly the thing when, so I will shut up in a second because I talk too much, but when translating Chinese, I find that it's very different from translating a Western language, in that you're working from pictures that the text creates in your head, the way the characters work. And so the pictures that I was getting were entirely consistent with my own experience of traveling in China over 30 odd years. So yeah, I think maybe it's a fundamentally different philosophical approach, in that we're more willing or more likely to question the mystic or the whatever.
In the Sons of the Red Lake, I think 99% is real, and the only mystic thing is the lake. But the idea is, if you believe it, it's there. If you don't believe, it's not there. But that's the Chinese idea. And also he uses the 5 elements, and also the heaven, earth, and people. Now you may see a picture over here, and there's a little person right here, and this is the whole mountain, Great Wall. So in the Chinese mind, as James mentioned, it's the whole thing. The heaven, earth, and people are one. And it may be real, maybe not, but in fact, everything, even the rich people came to the hotel enjoying themselves, trying to eat wild animals and stuff. That's real, very real. And also get the prostitutes in the hotel. That's very real too. So I think it's very realistic compared to some other authors who use a lot of analogies and mystic animals and stuff.
Okay, thank you. And we have another question from James Richardson, which is a sort of a broader question, again, to both of you, in terms of what do you feel is new about Zhou Daxin's novels? What's different about them from what came before in Chinese to English translation, obviously within your experience? Is there something that's really innovative that you could identify about what Zhou Daxin writes?
I think James,
yes, but I can't identify it.
Yeah, James will have to say.
Okay, James, go first.
No, when you asked that question, I was thinking, I'm looking at the novels, the last couple I've done since Longevity Park, and certainly it feels different. But I cannot for the life of me say why, except that it's, weirdly, I would say it's softer. The impression you get is it's a very generous one. The last couple of novels I've worked on have been actually about corruption in Chinese politics, which has been fascinating and would be very welcome to Western readers. But that's quite in your face. And quite, whereas there's again, we come back to this more holistic approach of Zhou Daxin, and I think that's probably what he brings, certainly from my experience. It's yeah, softness, or I don't know. I hope I kind of make myself clear. It's not that he doesn't avoid the harshness of reality, but it's in its place. So it doesn't dominate. I think that's I just have it gives me a nice feeling, I have to say, remembering Longevity Park and reading it and translating it.
Yeah, I think James translated more or of Zhou Daxin, he had to say. I read the book James translated and also translated this one. Compared with this one, instead of the difference, I saw the similarity, the striking similarity between the two. Yeah, both describing women, their greatness, their resilience, saving the world and the men's world.
Yeah, men don't come out terribly well. Which may or may not be an accurate reflection.
Whatever.
One of our other readers has identified something else which she sees as common to both books, which is that both books have a strong narrative structure. This is from Linda.
Yes.
And with really excellent storytelling. To what extent do you think that's typical of contemporary Chinese literature?
Well, I think I said in the comments, my experience is that it's one of the great strengths, is the clarity of the storytelling. It's not technically obtrusive, but it's there. It's very easy. It takes the reader along with it very clearly, and it's sometimes it's very clever. I mean, the structure of Longevity Park is very clever. Not just in the series of lectures, but in the way that the nurse's story develops, and you're with her every step of the way. So yeah, I think, and certainly the other books I've done, they are, and when, yeah, they're great stories in their way, and that's their strength. Which not to say that there isn't great descriptive writing and so on in them as well, but the reader is drawn along into them, which is exactly what you want in a book, really.
Yeah, the several books I read and translated, like Shi Tiesheng's Ding Yi's Odyssey, Eve and Adam came out of Eden into people's souls and living with them. And but even though the stories are real, the people are real, and what they are doing are real. So I think the reality, instead of the mystic part, the reality serves the mystic part, is the opposite. The mystic part serves the reality. It tries to make it more interesting, even deeper in meaning, connotation, and even the Zhang Wei's the Songs of the Forest. A lot of half human, half animal, but actually the story is so real. And I lived through them. When I translate them, it's, oh my gosh, every part of it is so real. So they try to express themselves. They try to depict the reality using a little bit of that, taking advantage of those mystic part.
Thank you very much. And I see Daniel has put the links to the Shutieshang in the chat as well, if anybody's got time to have a quick look at them before we go.
If you don't mind, Francis, I'd just like to jump on to the final point of Linda's question. And because I've shepherded a lot of these books through the production process over here at Sino's Books. So I've seen what the original Chinese form are, and then we transfer that into an English context, right? So, for example, Zhou Daxin always has a very interesting structure of his books. It's one of his trademarks, I would argue. So, for example, even as far back as things like after the finale, it's structured as a series of interviews in which Zhou Daxin himself is the insert character, but he's silent throughout the entire book. And then in, for example, Fields of Joy, it's framed as a question answered together with a father and his dead son. And then even in Sons of Red Lake, Zhou Daxin uses an interesting structure where there's two parts. There is the Earth chapter, I believe, the Sky chapter and the Earth chapter. And then inside the actual chapter structure itself, it starts with water and moves through things like air, earth, etc., and eventually ends up in water again, echoing kind of the location of the book itself and around Red Lake. So I would just like to just jump in real quick just to kind of provide that context.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Daniel, are we at time? I'm not sure what you wanting to do here.
I'm good. I think we have one final bit, and we would just like to quickly introduce the next event coming along on the CLRC. Maria, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me well?
Yes, indeed. Give me a second. Let me just spotlight you real quick. There you go.
Thank you. So hello, good afternoon, everyone. And well, again, thank you all for attending our session today. As Daniel just introduced, my name is Maria, and I will be chairing our next meeting. So if you would like to make a note of it already, we will be meeting on Friday, the 27th of May, again here on Zoom. Next month, we will be going back to a more traditional, let's say, type of format of our Chinese Literature Readers Club. Compared to what we've seen today, as the focus of our next session will be 2016 novel Broken Wings by Zha Pinghua, which was later on translated into English by Nikki Harman in 2019. So just to give you a very brief introduction to the book, the novel revolves around the story of Butterfly, who is a young girl of humble and rural origins. But Butterfly is also a very ambitious young woman who aspires to city life, at the same time hopes to help her family financially. So dreaming about a better future, she's lured into an attractive job offer in the city, which eventually makes her the victim of a much bigger plan. So here is the moment in the book where themes of women trafficking and forced marriage are brought in. On a scenery of great urban investments on the one side and the expenses paid by village life on the other. As it was in our previous episodes of the book club, Translator, in this case, Nikki Harman, will be joining to enrich our conversation and hopefully to let us into a little bit on what was like for her to investigate, tackle, and eventually deliver to an English audience these delicate social issues that are still able to make Broken Wings so contemporary and relevant even today. So if you would like to order your copy in advance, I am posting here in the chat a couple of useful links where you can both get the book and learn a little bit more about our translator. And yeah, again, a big thank you for your participation, and I really hope to see you again in May.
Thank you so much for that, Maria. I think that was a very good event. I mean, we're a little bit over time, unfortunately, but there's thank you to all of the translators. Thank you to James and Haiwang, and thank you, Francis, for helping us with the event, and thank you most of all to Vivian for hosting. We also like to thank Xue Laoshi for helping us on the publicity front, which I think you can see went very well. And yeah, and we hope to see you at the next event.
Can I just add one more special thanks as well? I would like to extend my special thanks to Hao Shujiang, Deputy Director General, International Liaison Department, China Writers Association. Thank you so much for your generous support.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you all next month then, and have a good one. And I think the summer is coming soon here in the UK, so we get to enjoy a little bit of sun and reading at the same time. So looking forward to that.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.